Well, hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of Derp your Hooves. So, I realize it's been about a year since I last made a instructional helicopter video, and we're going to be using the Bell 407, which is the stock helicopter and Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. Now, it's one of them. It's just one of the easier ones to use. And I understand that mine looks different. You know, it's just that I did a custom livery, so relax. It's the same helicopter. And we're going to go inside the cockpit, and you're going to say, maybe this doesn't look like what I see when I load the stock helicopter. So I have some custom textures. The instrument panel background, let's click on that with our mouse. Instrument panel background, this whole area here. Yes, it's black, it's not white, it's got carbon fiber. That's the only difference. You know that, and I got rid of the no smoking sign, you know, just because I want my logo there. And we're focusing on the gauges. I did not change or alter the gauges in any way, even if I could, which maybe I can. I didn't. They're very important. It's very important to our lesson today. So we've got some basic gauges here that I want to go over, and they're very important if you're saying I've never flown a helicopter and I just want to get going. Well, okay, we're going to do that, but just bear with me here because you'll thank me later, because we're actually going to teach you kind of how to fly a helicopter. So another really quick thing here before we begin, let's go over my disclaimer. And my disclaimer is, hey, I'm a sim pilot. And I am not an actual pilot, and I do not have a pilot's license. So please do not use my videos to actually try and go fly a helicopter. Don't do it. And if you do, know that I accept no responsibility or liability of what happens to you or your passengers, because this is a flight sim tutorial video, not an actual flight video. So although some things may apply, again, I'm not accepting any responsibility of liability. Use this knowledge at your own risk. So let's talk about flying in the sim. So we got some gauges here. We got our airspeed gauge. We've got our roll pitch gauge. We've got our altimeter. We've got pretty much a torque gauge here for the rotor. We've got our navigational or directional finder. I forget its exact name, but that's what we call it. I like to call it a compass because that's pretty much what it is, but that's our navigational finder. And we have our vertical speed gauge, and then we have a slip indicator. So these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 gauges are pretty important, and you also have an 8, your torque gauge. So, you know, out of the 3, 1, 2, 3, these are pretty important. This is very important. So let's kind of go over what they do. Your airspeed gauge. If you've never ever flown anything in the sim and you're trying helicopters, well, it's a lot harder than flying a fixed-wing airplane like a Cessna or anything with wings. Helicopters don't have wings, and they have different flight dynamics. So you're in for a ride, but, you know, I guess you could start with helicopters. If you've flown fixed-wing aircraft, there's only a few things that apply. So let's go over it. Our airspeed gauge. If you already know what this is, I guess you can skip the 5 seconds of me talking, but this is how fast are you going? In knots, not in miles per hour, in knots. Right now we're on the ground, so it's at 0 knots. Your pitch indicator, which is pitch, yaw, roll. Right now we're perfectly level. Oh, and you gotta forgive me. I have to clear my throat. Haven't been feeling well. Okay, let's try that. So here we go, and we're perfectly level. So sky, ground, and we're perfectly level. So it indicates nose up, nose down. You know what direction you're heading in, and rolling to the right, rolling to the left. Right over here is your altimeter, which indicates how high or low you are. Right now we're at about 100 feet above sea level. That's what this certain airport, the Tokyo heliport, is located at height-wise. Perhaps in real life, but definitely in the sim. So we're going to take that. Okay. Not really going to focus on the torque gauge. It's all in the green. That's all we really need to worry about. Now, this is pretty important because, hey, it's not like driving a car. You have to know what direction you're headed in. So if you were like in the military or like the army, or some of the ground forces or whatever, or if you were ever like a Boy Scout, a Girl Scout, or anyone ever taught you how to use a compass, well, then you have a leg up on other people because this is how we navigate aircraft. We don't make a right on ground and a left on. Now, in helicopters, yeah, you might, like with the police helicopters and news helicopters, yeah, it's important to know landmarks, but, you're a heading of 36 or 0, which is north. And right now we're facing 19. See, that's 19, 19 in front of you, because we're pretty much at 19. So this would be 03. So anyhow, just know that we're at 19. And it's just set right now. I could adjust the two knobs on the side. We're just going to leave them default because we're not going anywhere in particular. But wherever this points is wherever you're going. That's the important thing to know. Now, you have your vertical speed indicator, vertical speed gauge. So right now it's also right here in between up and down. This is kind of important in a helicopter. It's in fixed wing aircraft too, some of the better ones. So it's going to tell you, are you going up? Are you going down? And it's pretty important when you're going to be landing in a helicopter because helicopters do not land like aircraft. So when I use all of these gauges together, it creates this wonderful symphony of not crash. Now, flying a helicopter, to basically get off the ground, we're going to pull up on our collective. This is a collective. This is a cyclic. If you were flying a fixed-wing airplane, this would be called a stick. And this would be called your throttle. Now, there is a throttle on here. There's this shaft that we can turn, but it's really not something that we can adjust in the sim. We already have our throttle set to where it needs to be in helicopters. Forget what you know about throttles in a fixed-wing aircraft. We're just using the collective. We pull up on the collective, it takes us up. We push down on the collective, it takes us down. That's all you need to really know about it. You can watch my hands as I fly. Pull up to go up, push down to go down, and then your cyclic or your stick is the same thing as anything else. Right, left, down, up. You push forward, the nose goes down. You pull back on the stick, the nose pitches up. And these are kind of important to flying a helicopter. So bear with me because we're going to do all this on the fly. And we're just going to zoom out to a better view. Now, if you're flying for the first time, it's going to start you out like that. That's fine too. I just like flying a little more level. And I highly encourage that you learn how to set your views so you have a left, a right, an up, a down. And I'm not going to go through key bindings. It'll make this a 3-hour video. But I have key bindings. So, it's great when you're like, I want to look left, I want to look right, I want to look up, I want to look down. I want to look at all my instruments. And it's good to just map some views. I can do that in another video. Let's go ahead and take off. So here we are, again, externally. We're at Tokyo Heliport, we're in Japan, and it's daytime, and we're not using live weather, just so you know, and we're not using live time, and we're not using nameplates, but we will have traffic flying around. Actual players. You're just not going to see them. So let's kind of just get in here, and I'm going to give ourselves a view like that. Now, we want to lift off. So the first thing I want to do is I want to turn on my landing lights, and I have a key bound for it. But there's a switch down here. You'll see it right there. See, I'm flipping it. I'm going to turn your landing lights on. So it's great to bind keys for all these functions. So when you take off, you want your landing lights on. Now, landing lights are on. Now I'm going to pull up on the collective for the helicopter to go up. Collective, cyclic. If I call this a stick, please forgive me. It is what it is. So we're going to pull up on the collective, and we're going to probably gently counter to the left with our rudder pedals with our feet so that we don't rotate in a direction, because remember, this is a helicopter and it wants to spin in the opposite direction of the blades. And we also have features like trim. I have everything set up in this so that the assists are off. This is like real, you know, big boy and big girl flying time here. So you're going to have to control it. We're really stepping it up. So I pull up on the collective, the helicopter goes up, and you see it wants to go to the right, so I counter it with a little bit of left pedal and not overcorrect. And then with my thumb on the hat switch, I sit here and I level her out, and I kind of go around. And then I'm just kind of like SpongeBob. I'm going to bring her around town, and I'm going to slowly back off on the collective just as I kind of circle the heliport, because we're going to do a really basic loop. Now I'm using my rudder pedals, and I know you can't see them, to kind of steer. And when you're flying a helicopter, there is actually a lot that's like flying an airplane. I'm using the rudder pedals to kind of turn and rotate a little bit, and you can do that, but you don't want to do it too much. You want to fly it kind of like an airplane, but right now we're just doing a really basic loop. And we're going to come in, and I did not turn my landing light off because we're just going to come right back around here and do a little loop. So I'm just easing on the collective, just very gently, just to get us in. And I don't want to dip too far down below the field. And I want to line myself up with the runway / helipad, because you're not landing Cessnas here, you're landing helicopters. And we're just going to come in, and you notice our airspeed's like at like 20 knots, right? We're coming in super slow, and we're going to want to bring it to 0, and we're going to have to, you know, push our cyclic over a little bit, and just kind of come in and try not to land on the grass. And nose up, nose down. Now it's a whole symphony of how do I get this on the circle. Now I'm going to tell you, if this is your first time, you're not going to get it on the circle. And I'll also say that if you're trying to talk and explain this to everybody to give them a lesson, then you might also not land perfectly on the H, so forgive me if I don't. And this takes practice. This takes lots of practice. And we come in, and we gently lower the cyclic, and we're working our feet on our rudder pedals, and we're playing with the trim, and we're almost there, we're almost there, we're almost there, and down. And we're there. Now, am I perfectly in the center? I don't think so. Let's take a look. Oh ho ho, I am. Close enough. We got our landing lights on. So that would be a basic takeoff and landing in the helicopter. We just made a big loop. That's all we did. We made a big circle. So that would be enough for a basic lesson. And if you want to continue on watching this video, you're more than welcome. We're going to take a little bit of spin, but this would be the basic lesson for just a takeoff and landing, and you would want to practice that over and over and over. Now I have a more basic video that kind of takes you through, and bear with me here. I'm not calling anybody a baby. Okay? Baby steps when you're learning how to fly anything. Helicopter, aircraft, just like, you know, when you were a little thing and you didn't even know your name, you were like all rolling around on your stomach and, you know, yeah. And then you had to learn how to walk and sit up, and you had to take baby steps before you could take your first steps. So it's the same thing when it comes to flying, baby steps. In the other video, you know, and I'll say it, and I'll mention it, you know, baby steps. Sometimes just up and down is what you want to practice. Just kind of like this. We're going to level out our trim. I have my trigger set to level out my trim, but I can also rock it. And just baby steps. Little itty bitty baby steps of up and down and up and down. Because if you go up too much, if you just pull up on the collective, or if you're using a throttle and you were to give it too much gas on the throttle, and then you were to let go, if you have everything set to realism like me, you're not going to bounce off the runway or off the helipad. It's going to end the sim and say you collided with an object and you overstressed the aircraft, or whatever the default message is. But, you know, try again and restart is what it's going to tell you. So there you have it. That's a simple takeoff and landing, and I highly recommend you practice that, because when you do, you can get to the next step. So I'm going to take a small pause here just for a second, and we're going to continue on just with some basic flying. So here we are, and you see my little baby steps kind of made it so I can't be perfectly centered how we were with our perfect, beautiful little landing. So I'm just going to kind of pull up on the collective and use my rudder pedals to rotate and slide and go over. And it doesn't really matter. I mean, and don't do this in a real helicopter. They will not be happy at how you scrape up the skids and how you ruin the asphalt on the helipad. Alright, and we just go over and over and over and over and over, and we're going to kind of center ourselves without flipping, and down. And it's a little better. And again, I'm just going to... Close enough. So, patience is the key to helicopters. Just like with flying, it's a different type of flying. So let's actually go and fly around Tokyo just a little bit. So this isn't just a tutorial video. So what we're going to do, so this is about 17 minutes through, everybody. So, you know, about 17, 18 minutes. So if you want to continue watching, what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing right now. We're going to, so you're getting a little light saying the cyclic is centered. So we're going to pull up and counter. And landing lights off. We could do it at a later date. And I'm just going to adjust my view really quick. There we go. And so I can actually take my hand off the collective for a second because I have the tension set to where it won't drop. And here's the second part about flying. So you notice I'm actually rolling to the left. And I'm kind of using my rudder pedals. So this is the thing about helicopter flight. So, and this is beautiful Tokyo here. And Tokyo is great for helicopters, by the way. The sim has all of these helipads set up everywhere for helicopters. So, yeah. So you play with your trim so that you're not constantly, you know, running the stick back and forth. Helicopters require all kinds of input, your trim. But you do kind of fly a helicopter the way you'd fly an airplane, where you want to roll to the left to go left, and you want to roll to the right to go right. Now, like I was showing you earlier on the loop, you can use your rudder pedals to rotate. Now, I don't recommend doing that if you're just going to be flying and you see then you have to compensate. We just did a 180. Did a 180. 360 is a full circle. That was a half circle. So we did a 180 and we're kind of hovering just a little bit here. Actually, we're dropping our speed. But we're kind of hovering. So this is a little more advanced hovering, but so I'm using my rudder pedals to rotate to the left. But when you're in forward flight, so we dip the nose down a little bit, pull up on the collective, and it's going to give us some speed, and we're going to be able to go forward. See, look at that. And there we are. We're flying, every pony. We're flying. Yes, we are. Virtually. And we're just gonna kind of go over here. Now you also might notice, because we're so low, that the buildings are kind of funky. Well, this is grammetry, however it reads out. And it has to do with AI and satellite imagery and how certain things are modeled. So if the buildings look all melty and apocalyptic, it is because of that. And I'll just say it's much better than it ever was in previous versions of the sim before 2020. So you're going to have to handle some things not looking so great, because it seems that we have focused on the airports. Helicopters were an afterthought. We haven't had them for long. And in 2024, who knows how that's going to work out. Apparently that's a whole different sim. And we're just going to gently come in here and land. And talking and landing are hard things to do. So it's the same principles I applied. You see, I'm so far off, and that was a bad landing. And lots of people are going to land like that in the beginning. So don't get discouraged when you do that. And this helicopter does clunk a little bit. This 407 is a great helicopter. And I'd like to say it's a great beginner's helicopter. And you might say, but look, Pony the Grass is higher than this. And again, helicopters were not really their goal. Neither was VR, by the way. We're not in VR. So, you know, you can turn these things off in settings. We're just going to deal with them. We're just going to deal with it. And hopefully 2024 is going to have something better. So here we are, and we're on the helipad. We went from one heliport to another in Japan. And I turned my landing lights off. You saw that. And I'm just rotating around, make you sick to your stomach and dizzy. And we're back in the cockpit. And we're back at our normal cockpit view. So here we are. We're on the ground. We went from one helipad to the next. We went across the bay, or the whatever it is, the harbor. Guessing it's a harbor. And this heliport apparently now is default in the sim. I downloaded it from flightsim.to. There's an upgrade for it for the one we took off at the Tokyo heliport. It looks like now it's in the sim by default. So that was it. That was basic takeoff and landing, and this is basic takeoff and landing from A to B. And I was saying stuff like, you know, the roll and the yaw and the pitch. I hope it's not too much for everybody. We're kind of getting a little more advanced, but you can look at my other 2 or 3 lessons in the older version of the Derpicopter and practice those basics. I highly recommend you practice the basics, but we're going to take off again. I'm just going to do something while I mute the mic. And there we go. Mic is unmuted. So again, I'm just going to sit here. Now, I kind of want to go over my hand positioning. So right here where I'm pointing, this is a little hat switch. And I bound this to my trim, to my rotor trim. And I have a second one on my collective here. Now, I don't think I mentioned this, but my collective and my stick are from WinWing. I feel that I've upgraded my equipment from the Logitech Cytec setup. Gave me about 3 years, and it's just started to go, and I thought it was better to get this stuff. Now, so just really quick, and again, I'm not being endorsed by anybody. They didn't give it to me for free. I bought it. So I'm not being paid to promote their products. So my collective from WinWing has a Hodis Orion 2 base, and then I forget what the top part is, and you have to buy both parts. You have to put it together yourself. Really easy to do, and there's videos on how to do it. But on the website, it's still in the catalog. It just shows out of stock, so I'm not sure if they're still making it or they're deciding not to sell it. I don't know what's going on. I purchased one. It was well worth the purchase. And then I purchased this F-18 stick, which I'm using as a cyclic. I really like them. It gives you more of a realistic feeling if you want to fly helicopters. I know other people that fly helicopters. They're YouTubers, they're Twitch streamers, and they use a throttle. And I think one of them actually has a helicopter pilot's license in real life, and he just uses his throttle. Now, you can use the throttle. There's nothing wrong with that. It works just fine. Before I bought my Cyclic, I did it, but I said, you know, hey, I really want to waste my money. Not waste my money, but, you know, spend the money that I do have on something. And I said, and you'll get that too if you flight sim a lot. You'll be like, well, gee, I was gonna go treat my significant other to a really expensive dinner and do something, but hey, I thought that I'd buy some stuff for my flight sim. Wow. Just know that's kind of how it works. You know, I was gonna go, whatever you were gonna go do, and then you spent the money on flight sim stuff. It does get expensive. This is going to be an expensive hobby, but it is cheaper than actually flying. Anyone who's an actual real pilot knows that, you know, just the gas alone is ouchie, 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 ouch, ouch, ouch. So, you can get this stuff from the Wing store. It's good stuff. It comes from China. You know, it's just, you can get collectives at other places. I'm not pushing it. But I don't use a gamepad. I think we already went through this, right? This here. This is a gamepad, and Pony's really cheap. And Pony's going to show you the gamepad, and it looks like an Xbox gamepad. And it's not plugged in right now because it's just not. But I don't fly with this. I play video games with this. And it looks just like an Xbox controller because it is, and it's really cheap, and it's made in the same factory in China that your Xbox controller is made in. It's just cheaper, and it does all the same stuff. So, we're not using that. We're using the Cyclic, Cyclic, and the Collective. So, we pull up on the Collective, and Pony, landing lights on, and nose down, and we're off. Landing lights off. So, you're constantly adjusting your trim. Now, I think this helicopter actually kind of resets the trim by itself when you land. Some of the other helicopters that I do fly, like the Cohen Sim stuff, you have to, that's why my trigger's set up, because you can't fire weapons in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, so I use my trigger right now to reset my trim, my rotor trim, to 0 before I take off, because, well, one of the things that you're gonna see when you're flying helicopters, and I don't really know where we're gonna go, I'm just gonna kind of fly around. One of the things about your trim is that, and by the way, I'm a self-taught helicopter pilot. I've read some stuff, and it really helped, and hey, reading is good. Everybody, this is why reading is good, because you can learn a lot by reading. So, you know, I'm kind of passing on my knowledge to you here on what I've learned, and it's been trial and error, and it's been over years. I was flying helicopters in flight sims, Microsoft Flight Simulator, before this version for like well over a decade, and I was so happy when I was like, helicopters, thank you for helicopters. You'd say, why? Well, because I like helicopters. How about we just leave it at that? And you can do all this cool stuff in helicopters. And I mean, you can do this in like a 152. But the one thing you can't do in a 152 is hover. So let's try and bring her into a hover. And it's going to be a whole symphony of rudder pedals and collective and cyclic and trim. And we're watching our airspeed because our airspeed's soon going to go to 0, and our vertical speed gauge there is dropping down. It's pointing down, so it shows that we're losing altitude. And that's what our altimeter shows too. See, I mean, you got to watch all these gauges, and you start to learn how to do this by feel. And look at this, Tokyo has flooded. It's like the floor of my bathroom if I leave the sink on too long. Okay, so you can look and you can see all the gauges. Look, you see the vertical speed indicator is pointing up, and we're slowly going up. And so we're trying to bring her into a hover. And I'll be honest with you, I've been flying some really fun fixed-wing aircraft lately too. So I may be a little rusty on my helicopter skills. But you can say, how good or bad is Pony flying the helicopter? And I'm not really familiar with Tokyo, and I do know that everything, like I said, looks melty, photogrammetry, but it doesn't look too bad. And so you can't hover in a Cessna 152, or a 172, or your Beechcraft Bonanza, or your Boeing 777, or whatever it is that you'd like to fly, your F-14A Tomcat, F-16, but you can in a helicopter. Now, you can do it in the Osprey, and hey, I got the Osprey too, and I like it. But the Osprey doesn't work with the Collective. You have to use a throttle to fly the Osprey. I don't know why. Maybe I'm just too lazy to want to bind it because I have to do all this stuff for all these planes. And hey, by the way, so again, welcome to flight simming, and you're going to have to learn how to bind things and make setups and all this stuff if you want to fly outside of Xbox, and if you want to fly without an Xbox controller. And it's lots of fun, every pony, see? Because you can do stuff like this. And we can look and you say, that's Tokyo Tower. Well, I think that's Tokyo Tower. It's not Tokyo Skytree. And you get to come in and I don't know what, palace, whatever traditional temple that would be right there, but I'm looking at it. And in a helicopter too, on like a 152, I could land wherever there's room to land, as long as I don't hit trees or stuff. You don't really need a helipad. You just have to say, whoa, Pony, be careful. And don't. And you're going to see that we're going to land. It's going to sink into the grass because the grass is floating. And I'm going to show you all that too. Now I have I have lots of things set to ultra and high because I have a really good video card, because I just upgraded machines. And really good video cards help in the sim. Down gently, Pony. And if I go to external view, it's like the mighty Pony helicopter was stalking its prey, the Cessna 152, waiting for it to fly over as it sat in the bush. This is rare footage of the Bell 407 sitting and waiting for a meal. Anyhow, so yeah, I mean, there's lots of stuff that just isn't right for helicopters because, well, they were an afterthought. But Asobo worked, I guess, really hard at making them more incorporated into the sim. And I know there were other helicopters that you could fly before they included their own flight dynamics, and some of them do. There's different helicopters that you can buy, and I have a couple of them that don't use the stims, yes, that don't use the Sims flight dynamics. They use their own. I have to turn off traffic because that kills frame rates. Ground traffic. We saw the little yellow taxi go by. So, I mean, that's pretty much it. That's flying a helicopter in the sim. Now, I'm going to throw this out there too, because if you have a VR headset, whatever your VR headset may be, I prefer the HP Reverb 2. But you can even fly it with a Quest. Quests are, they're good too. I don't really like them, but, if you fly a helicopter in VR, then it's so much easier than flying it on the monitor. It's you're less likely to crash. I could land there, but I showed you we could land in a small little field. So flying in VR is even better. Now I'm also just going to have this disclaimer that right now I do not have the time or the patience to set up my video software so that I can get really good graphics to you in VR. Pony wants to fly helicopters, not be a software engineer and an IT technician right now. So, but you know, there's other people's YouTube tutorial videos that you can watch. I highly recommend you watch them. And that is just part of the fun of flight simming. Everybody is out of the box. It's a great sim. It's a good sim. But if you're saying to yourself, and some people will say this to themselves, and then they'll post it on forums on social media and everything else. You know, why aren't my graphics like this? Why isn't this like that? And why isn't that? And it's so much work. Well, you're going to learn, you know, some stuff about computers and settings. And it's all good for you, I guess. Or you're not. But, you know, good hardware and then learning how to tweak everything is what's going to get you the results. Sometimes it's a little techy. But I will say that if you continue to fly the sim and you want the best out of it, then you are going to have to learn how to do it yourself. And you can learn how to do it by watching YouTube tutorial videos, good ones and bad ones. And eventually, you will have the sim set wherever you want it. So, we're just going to come in here, look at that little teeny tiny helipad, see if we can land on it very carefully. I have in the past. I know I can do it. It looks all melty. It looks so small. How am I going to land on that? Well, yeah, the more I joke, the more likely I am to actually, like, tumble off the building. And don't be afraid if that happens too. Down, pony, down. See? Clunk! Yeah. And landing lights off. And, well, I made it. And this is grammetry. I mean, look at this thing. Look at this helipad. It's like, if this was real life, if it was real life, and I could actually fly a helicopter, I'd be like, I am not landing on this. It looks like, I don't know what landed on this, but it looks like it was made out of Play-Doh. And it just, you know. So, anyhow, I'm going to leave it at that. You know, actually I'm not. That's just kind of what we don't want to show. So, landing lights on. Let's kind of adjust our trim. Pull up on the collective. And up we go. And let's see if we can't find a nicer, less melty helipad to land on. Again, I'm just going to adjust my view. See, that one's terrible. So, yeah, you know, helicopters are fun. You're going to just have to kind of suck it up a little bit and accept that the sim was never really intended for helicopters, and the lower you get to things without lots of third-party add-on software, which will drop your frame rates. All the extra scenery stuff you put in is just more numbers for your GPU and your CPU and your computer to crunch and process, and you will lose frame rates. And that's just how it goes. So, it's going to be a little melty if you're flying helicopters, and eventually you just kind of accept it. You know, the sun was out too long and all the buildings melted. They just weren't built right. But there you go. Helicopters in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. A little bit more of an advanced flight using the collective and the cyclic. collective, hey, cyclic, and rudder pedals. And this is the Rainbow Bridge here in the sim in Tokyo. And now, here's a fun little fact. When's the video going to end, Pony? Well, sometimes Pony just flies for hours when he can. The one thing you couldn't do in the sim, even before helicopters, was fly under, especially the Rainbow Bridge. And you'd say, well, how do you know this, Pony? Because Pony tried endlessly to be met by an invisible wall that would kill you. Now, it may actually knock us down, and I don't think in real life that you're actually allowed to fly helicopters under bridges. And it might give us a little push. There it is. There's our nudge. Now, before there was a nudge, and we just flew under the bridge, every pony. Before there was a nudge, see, there's the bridge. Look, you flew under the bridge. Before there was a nudge, there was just you collided with an object. They fixed that. And now there are lots of bridges that you can fly under in the sim. And that's one of them. Just so you know. So, I'm having lots of fun here flying my helicopter. And, falling in love again with this 407. I do recommend, and hey, everybody, like I said, I'm not being endorsed. I like the Cohen sim helicopters. Like the 500E is a really good helicopter. But we're using the 407 right now, the Bell. Whatever the one is in the sim. The Bell, you should get this default. It's free when you buy the sim. I mean, it comes with the sim. So, let's maybe go land in the parking lot, shall we? Yeah, that'll be fine. And let's just be careful as we come in, not to hit anything, and turn on our landing lights so whatever digital people are on the ground know that we're coming in and that we're not trying to squash them. And I'm just going to look for something nice and level. It doesn't have to be a box. We could land anywhere, because you could, and I guess in real life, as long as it's empty, you could land a helicopter. That's what I've heard. As long as it's clear of people. And carefully. And I would guess that what's in front of us are trailers. See, and that was a much better landing. Landing lights on. Ooh, you didn't turn your landing lights on, Pony. So there you go. Just some helicopter fun in the sim. Again, this is just the stock Bell 407. I think it is, right? The Cohen sim, I think, has the 406, and I kind of like that one too. But this is the stock one that you can get in the sim. Just with, my texture mods. Flying helicopters is fun. So I hope, for anyone who's watching this, that this video was kind of helpful for you. I know I didn't fully explain how to hover. I just kind of went over things. I just wanted to give a little touch-up lesson on the one from a year ago. If you just keep practicing and you keep at it, you can probably fly helicopters. Even if you think you can't, you probably can, at least in the sim. So, hey everybody, I'm going to end this right here. Finally, I'm going to end the whole video if you made it all the way here. And I'm going to say, if you like what you saw, whether you find it informative or humorous, or you're just like, this guy, no. Well, feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Derp Your Hooves. And as always, everybody, and every pony, thank you for watching Derp Your Hooves, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the skies.